We do have a quorum.
Thank you. We can stand for the pledge, please. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we go any further into the agenda, I want to make sure our audience knows we are being videotaped. Okay, and streaming live tonight, Jillian? Okay. If I could have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. Okay. Item number 5, Interim Chief Executive Officer Report. Mr. Dilger, do you have something for us tonight?
I do. Thank you for the floor, ma'am. First and foremost, I want to address the circumstance that happened last week on our campus. 2 individual threats were made on campus on Wednesday, 11/20/2019. We followed the protocol by working with our local sheriff's department, who thoroughly investigated both of these instances that very same evening. It was a long evening, but we wanted to make sure we got to the bottom of it and to ensure the safety of all of our students and staff. The Sheriff's Department deemed that both instances were not credible, and we should have no hesitation in keeping the campus open as scheduled. In an abundance of caution, we took the step to have a student resource officer on site the following day. Many parents commented through our social media that the SRO did provide a sense of relief seeing them when they pulled up the campus that morning. We also partnered with Lancaster School District for increased site support, given the potential of that need on our campus. Thank you for those districts, both Palmdale School District and Lancaster School District, for allowing us to utilize those different resources. We're also taking this opportunity to relook at our safety plan and communications during these instances. Attendance was down roughly 18% on Thursday as a result. An estimated loss of $30,000 to $40,000 due to our daily average attendance. Attendance on Friday was already expected to be lower because of the upcoming Thanksgiving break, but it was great to see that this was only 6% lower than average.
Not bad.
That shows us that our community is putting the students back in our trust, even though this circumstance happened midway throughout the week. So I was happy to see those trends, and hopefully that will carry on through our support of our community for when they return a week from today. On a little bit of a lighter note, our robotics team hosted an event this Saturday for many of our local teams. I want to give kudos to those students and staff members who supported our local robotics community. It was a great event here on our campus. Final touches are being done on the elementary school gym, and we expect to be able to utilize this gym after the Thanksgiving break. This will help us with our PE. This will help us with our after-school programming, help us with school-wide assemblies. So we're really excited to have that option available to our students and our staff, and of course our community. Again, on our elementary campus, the steel awnings for the elementary campus, if you think about our loop drop-off, are being installed this week. This will help ensure that our students during drop-off and pickup are not subjected to rain or anything like that. We had contingency plans to have them picked up within one of our local or within our buildings and classrooms while those were still in progress. But when they come back from Thanksgiving break, those should be installed. Will help us protect our children from those more inclement weather situations. So we're excited for that, but that's a big construction need this week. So we're making sure that there is no student or staff activity on the turf field out there, because they're gonna have to swing that big awning over that field. So our athletics department has rescheduled certain practices into local community resources to ensure that that field stays safe during this last piece of construction of those steel awnings. Last but not least, staff is definitely ready for this mini break this week. They're really looking forward to this opportunity to clear the brain and then move back forward and support our students at a high level on Monday. But we also wanted to say we're thankful for the support of our board and for you guys' continued support of TPAA. When we're going through all the things we're thankful for this week, that's definitely one that the staff wanted to communicate as well too. That is my CEO interim report. Thank you for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Dilger. Moving forward on the agenda,
Can I ask a question or two
uh,
on his report, or do I wait?
do we have director reports on the agenda this time?
No.
Go ahead and ask now, that's fine.
With regards to what happened on Thursday, I noticed that there was a lot of chatter on the Facebook page, and I called in several times and spoke to a couple of representatives. And I don't know who it was I spoke to, quite honestly, and I know I wasn't gonna get you because you were pretty busy. But that maybe in the future, have more, because a lot of the parents there were kind of stirring. And they were stirring the pot, which is like, well, then I'm definitely not taking my kid. Oh, well, I've just heard it, I'm not gonna take my kid because nobody seems to be responding, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if that's a priority. Obviously, when something like that happens, maybe stop the comments on the Facebook page for a little bit, shut it down, so that parents aren't antagonizing each other, because I noticed a lot of it was happening. And I just got a little worried, so I was calling you guys and I was like, hey, somebody probably needs to get on this Facebook page because there's some major comments of parents. I'm not taking my kid, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. So just an FYI for the future. And also, something kind of sort of not related, but kind of sort of yeah. Apparently parents are finding out that I'm on the board of directors. I was approached by a parent, and I don't want to say who because I don't want to betray their confidence, that there was an arrest made of a child here on campus due to sale of drugs. Was that true?
We cannot discuss that in open session,
Okay.
okay?
All right.
So we'll touch base on that. Thank you. Okay. If you would make note about that, those negatory comments,
Absolutely.
okay?
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback,
No,
man.
no,
And these
absolutely.
are some of the items that we have agendized to take a look at as a result of this.
Yeah, because I wasn't
Situation.
sure, like, if you're able to shut down your comments just to stop it, you know, or just post a comment and say, hey, this is what's going on, everything is safe, stop the comments, you know?
Absolutely.
I do know that 18%
Yeah.
is probably not, I did some checking with the other local districts who I'm sure you all know have had some problems
Yeah.
since the incident at Saugus. 18% is not too bad, actually. It was higher at the high schools. So,
Personally, I wouldn't have brought my children had I seen or had a call about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't receive a call. All I saw was I think it was a post, and then I saw an email after the fact. But I had already dropped off my kid.
And
so
not
I
to
figured
bring
that's the
your
safest
child-
place to be.
that's, well, and not to bring, you have to err on the side of taking care of your own children.
Absolutely.
And I think that we are all supportive of that.
No,
And I don't think
100%.
anybody has negative feelings about that.
Yeah.
But,
But they
okay.
were here.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they were
thank
here.
you. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Are there any other comments in regards to Mr. Dilger's report?
Just one quick comment, Kathy. Did you know staff plans to file a J-13 based on the loss of attendance day?
Though not at this point in time, as we have the makeup days already built in during that. If we can reconsider that if there's strong belief that from the board that we should consider taking that action. But that has not been discussed as of now.
It will,
What was the number?
yeah, that's what I was thinking. We have 60 days to make that decision, or is it only 30?
We've got time, and
That's
it would
what I
just allow
thought.
it to be recaptured
Should-
from that day.
That's what I
You don't have to
thought, right.
reschedule or make any calendar
No.
changes. It would just
Okay.
be given
Yeah.
everything that was happening in the valley, as you mentioned. This
Yeah,
was a
that's-
valley-wide.
And we
Challenge.
will not be out flying solo there, so.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so moving forward, item number 6, consideration of approval of contract MOU for student services consultant and principal substitute as needed. Mr. Dilger?
Yes, the recent changes the board announced last board meeting left us with a large need in the area of student services, student discipline, and crisis management. I asked the board to consider leveraging Mike Perkins through an MOU to help support TPAA while our various vacancies are being filled, to ensure that our staff have this direct support from an expert that's been established in the field.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
I have a question. I saw a contract further down.
When we get there, we will explain that.
But
Okay, this is specific to only the last couple days of November and December.
Perfect.
Okay,
Who is Mike Perkins? Can I
Actually, I asked him to be here tonight, but he promised his son he would be in Costa Mesa for the Thanksgiving holiday. Dr. Porter, do you want to give us a background on Mike Perkins?
Probably could a little bit.
Just-
Mike Perkins just recently retired from Palmdale School District, where he was the director for 5 years or so of student services.
Okay.
So he did all the pupil personnel stuff, attendance, discipline, restorative justice. He was a big help in turning Oak Tree across the street here into a real positive rehabilitation model rather than a punitive model. A lot of depth.
So he's been
Also-
an administrator in
Oh,
Palmdale.
and he hadn't done principal for 5 or 6 years, but probably by 5 or 6 year margin, he was the most experienced principal in the district.
He also was a principal for the
Daisy
Keppel.
Gibson.
Yeah.
He was
Yes.
principal in Keppel and
Yeah.
and
And
25 years in Palmdale.
Recently, they had a principal leave the Sage Academy. Mike was dropped in there to run that academy here a lot, March
He's
through
been a-
June.
He's been a troubleshooter on campuses for the district for a couple of years.
And when we say, as student services consultant and principal substitute, what would his role, what do we?
Well, his role is in crisis management, and he'll be looking at our discipline model and our board policies to make sure that, number one, that we have them, number two, they are aligned with current ed code, suspensions, expulsions, as well as, I think you will remember that at,
I meant, could he be, when I see principal substitute, I kind of think of, can he be like the help out as a principal
Yes.
of the elementary school?
Yes.
Or wherever we need him as,
Yes.
in that role?
Yes.
That's all I.
Both as a substitute and as a coach.
That's what I
Yes.
meant.
Because
That's
he
what I
really
Yes.
specializes in coaching new
Yes.
or inexperienced staff members.
Or should it be really coach, principal coach, or do we want to just leave it principal? That's
he
fine.
doesn't care what he's called.
Call him anything but late for supper.
Okay, that's fine. I'm done.
Okay. Are there any other questions or concerns, discussion regarding this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. Item number 7, consideration of approval of board policy 014, visitor policy. In front of you, you will have 2 copies of the visitor policy. And I would like the motion to be to approve the amended policy as it lays in front of you, the one that has the red outline at the top. When this is a policy actually we had requested, I don't know, 6+ months ago, maybe a little longer, after we went through our Brown Act training and taking into consideration Mrs. Huerta's concerns about our open campus. So this policy, as opposed to what was posted with our agenda, the amendments are, this policy shall not apply to parents, employees, or members of the general public during a TPAA board meeting or any other meeting determined to be covered by the California Open Meeting Law, otherwise known as the Brown Act. The little further down the page on bullet number 2, we are striking during this, actually,
You have a typo there. You want to include day.
I want to include day. Day should not be excluded.
Okay.
So it will be for, the strikeout is, or for after-school activities, including tutors, sports, coaches, etc. And then the next bullet, we are striking the word students. It did read all students, so that will be stricken, and it will now read all returning TPAA students and students not currently enrolled in TPAA. And those are the only 2 amendments to the visitors policy. And otherwise, this is, what we're all used to doing anyway, making appointments, getting our badges. The visitors will present their driver's license and they get those badges through, is that the Raptor system we're using?
I believe so.
Through, which is being used now in my many school districts. So those are the two changes. Now I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
A second.
Thank whoever is responsible for this.
Be our HR director.
This is really consistent with what goes on in most districts with closed campuses these days. Unfortunately, the days of not having a fence around your schoolyard and just letting open access is a thing of the past.
I think Mr. Strong did an excellent job, and I'm just,
Thanks.
will
It
you
does what we
relay the
need to
board's
do.
appreciation,
Happy
please?
to.
This is gonna replace in our policies, correct?
It's not going to replace, it's now going to
It's
be,
a new,
it's a
one.
new
Okay,
policy.
it's not addition, okay.
Yes.
Okay, and are we waiting till that date is inserted and getting a new copy?
No, we will, Jillian, you will print new copies for, and
Yeah.
make sure that if approved, that this is posted on our website with our other policies.
And then, so we were looking into doing your new policies quarterly, because sometimes we have one like every single month. So if that's okay with you, we'll do that, or I can do them every month, whatever you guys prefer.
I think the quarterly is fine, but I think this one needs to happen now.
Will they get posted on the website sooner than that? It's just the printed for your hard copies.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
And, I think last week, those events, even though they were, as it turned out,
Not
there wasn't a lot of potential harm. If parents get scared and we don't have a policy that says, no, you gotta, then we're subject to kind of like the old-fashioned run on the bank. And before you know it, you've got a lot of concerned parents roaming around your campus, and it really gets untenable.
I have a couple of
Sure.
clarifying questions if we have time.
Absolutely.
This refers to main campus. Does that mean everyone must check in here at this office outside of this
No.
conference?
Well,
room?
that's a good question. Do we have the Raptor down at the elementary school?
Both main entrances are equipped with that system.
Okay, so then it would be my advice that if you're here for the elementary side,
That would be our preference as well too, because they have the resources and the procedures in play to get you to where you need to on that campus. It'd be a lot more difficult to ensure the safety if we're having somebody check in here and walk through
and
campus
walk
and go
them
that
through,
way.
exactly.
My preference would be to work with the campus that you have the business to be in. If you need both campuses, then check out of that one and check into this one. Allows us to make sure we exactly know where these individuals are on our
Do
campus.
you know, are we using the same color badges for the same days on both campus?
I'll have to verify that, I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Michelle brings up a good point for clarification. The last paragraph on page 2, and we probably need to repaginate this, but it says, must report to administrative main office. That was fine until there was an office down here. And we probably should put either the main office for junior, senior high school or the elementary office for K through 5.
I'd like to
Might be a good-
approve, John, I'd like to approve this as it stands tonight. And Paul, would you bring it back at our
amendment?
next meeting with the changes that have been mentioned?
Absolutely, be more detailed
Okay.
in those specific check-in
Right,
points.
because I said, this was written before we opened the elementary
Okay,
campus.
this is left over from when you asked before?
This is left over from when I asked for it.
Okay.
Can I
Yep.
clarify, as a board member, I'm reading this, and so we are not allowed to tour the campus, walk on the campus?
I don't
No.
feel comfortable with that.
Well, no member, none of us, including myself, I never show up on this campus that I don't have an appointment. And I think it is bad form. This is my opinion, and if you disagree with me, we can talk about changes. But I think it's bad form for any of us to show up without notifying the principal, the other principal, the CEO, somebody that we'd like to be on campus, that we have legitimate business to be on
I
campus.
don't see that, that's
Yeah, I
what
think
this
that's
says.
fair. I mean, it says very
But it
explicitly that
says-
we need permission, and I'm not really
Let's,
comfortable with
let's
item 10.
find,
On page 3, if a school personnel encounter an unaccompanied visitor, so we would be unaccompanied if we were just a board member and said, gee, I want to go see an assembly, or I want to go see how robotics is run.
I don't think that asking to have us accompanied, I've never been on this campus outside of this building that I haven't been escorted.
You know, as a teacher, when I taught at Palmdale High School, one of the biggest things was our board members never, how do they know what we're doing? How do they care? They're not here seeing what we do.
And I
So-
agree with that, and that's why this is not restrictive, only in the sense that you have to, somebody has to know you're coming,
Okay.
okay?
Okay,
And I think to ask that we are escorted is not out of line.
But if there's no one available to escort?
Paul, is there ever going to be nobody available to escort?
We would ensure that we always have somebody availability for any of our visitors if this approval does move forward, whether it be a camp supervision or myself or another administrator.
Sarah has usually accompanied me.
Kathy, I think it just occurs to me, since we're gonna have to amend the location policy, why don't we fine tune the board? Because if you're coming in and you've been invited to an assembly or to an event
An assembly and event,
that may not be open to the public,
right,
I don't think a board member needs a
okay.
Checking in is fine. I don't have a
Checking in.
problem.
And
Absolutely.
okay, wait a minute. We're talking about two separate
Sure.
things. I am perfectly willing to amend this for us, especially if you've been here, you know where you're going. I don't think it's out of line to request an escort if you're going to a classroom, but if you're going to an assembly, the cafeteria, that's another thing. But I'd like to approve this policy tonight as it stands because it applies to the public. And I want to provide that level of protection to our students and staff tonight as it stands. And when we come back at our next meeting, let's make the adjustments that we've talked about tonight for board members.
All right.
We're all big people. We can live with this for a couple of weeks.
So this will be back on the agenda at our
With edits. And
December meeting.
could I ask for those changes that you want to cover the board members? That we email them to Jillian? And we can live with them. If somebody needs to come on campus now, they all know our faces. We're good. But my focus tonight is in light of what happened last week with the lobby that was packed, the people that were trying to come in the doors, I want to protect our students and staff now.
So Jillian will then, prior to our next board meeting, as usual, we will get we pass this tonight so that we have some type of policy.
Yeah.
When you send out the board meeting agenda, you will probably have in it the rewrite of, or whatever direction we'd like to see about the main office and how we want to do with board members. And then we can if we want to comment, we would comment back to you saying, no, I'd like to see this with the board members or whatever.
Or just amend the motion to say that we approve it with the understanding that at the next board meeting, we will be reviewing board member policy for access to campus.
And to insert the elementary and high school. John, would you amend your motion, please?
That's really good.
Before we finalize, and
Go
I
ahead.
do not want to stand hard on it, can we approve without item 10?
No,
Just because I think that's problematic.
no, we're speaking to a larger audience right now. And if we don't hold ourselves, I'll tell you what, yes, we can. Why don't we either or? Because if you tell me
I'm
that you're
calling
coming
someone.
on comment, let's do that. Let's do either or. John, will you amend your motion again? That they either have to have, notice the chief executive officer or the president? And if you
why
let
don't we-
me
All we
know-
have to do is put and/or, just
Okay.
and/or, is that what you said?
Right.
Yes.
I'm cool with
And,
that.
But again,
okay?
I don't,
Yes, that's easy. We can do that.
but again, maybe the thing is, we just notify either or. I don't know if we have is it more notifying, letting the president or letting the
In my
CEO know that you would like to
Okay,
be
in my view, on Thursday, I needed to know because he was busy.
Right.
Normal course of events, it's whoever is sitting in that
No,
seat.
but-
I don't need to know you're here.
But what I mean is it more, I think what some people are concerned about is, must be pre-approved
Why don't we
versus
say-
being notified, just notify.
Well-
I notify either you or, hey, if I can't get a hold of Paul, I gotta go, hey, Kathy, I wanna let you know, I'd like to be on campus
And here's
tomorrow.
what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say, Gary, that's fine with me, but will you touch base with the CEO to make sure it's not a testing day?
That's what I meant.
Okay.
That's the
So-
notification.
So why don't we change pre-approved to notified?
With,
Not, just says,
Must be,
Instead of be pre-approved, just must notify.
Must
Instead
be.
of be pre-approved
I would say
by
must notify
substitute or
24 hours in
notified.
advance.
Jillian?
then it really should be, say, must be noticed to,
Must notify.
I'm trying to
Make
change
it
it.
notice to,
Noticed to.
yeah, the CEO
And/or the,
and/or. And you know what?
Thank you.
Maybe we just want to make it or,
okay, or,
right?
that's fine.
What is your vision?
I'm absolutely fine with what's being discussed here with the or, as well as the
No.
notice. Yeah,
And-
absolutely fine.
And I'll tell you, here-
Let's strike and just make it or.
the public access by community members, parents, has at its core one set of circumstances and one set of reasons. Different than the reasons for a
Different
board
from,
meeting.
that's right.
And so I'm guessing, Paul, probably need to list, here's why a board member might need to be on campus for part of the background for their legislative
I
background.
don't think we need to define it because a board member can simply say, I see we're having,
But if you're
you know.
if you're gonna rewrite part of this for the
but I don't think
board.
we have to tie board members' hands by saying they can only come to see. I think if Michelle
No.
says,
No, I think you
she's interested.
outline the circumstances and
no,
I think as long as you let the president
up.
or
That's-
you
that's
let
courtesy.
Paul know,
That
it's
is
just a
courtesy.
courtesy.
all right.
Yeah.
I'd like to come by, whatever. Because it's different than, there's many times Sarah sends us stuff about assemblies and stuff, and I email Sarah, oh, I'll be there. I figure I don't have to let, Sarah's gonna let you know or
Exactly.
anybody know, hey, these are the board members that have
Exactly.
come to the presentation or
and
whatever.
Sarah, you do
So-
that routinely, right?
Oh, yeah.
As do you, Jillian, when yeah. So I think that's noticed. I think that counts as noticed.
Well, I think we just have,
Or
must notify, because, and it's just a courtesy,
And
We've
it
got a lot of
prevents
things
us
going
from
on.
interrupting,
Paul would like to know
yes.
If we're all showing up at
if,
once.
you're gonna
Exactly.
have 4 board members too
Right.
showing up.
And that's the other thing we have to be careful of, so.
Yeah, you can't have,
Yes.
you should not
More
have
issues
5.
with change more than that.
And there are times, like for instance, Mark and I are working on something now for graduation requirements. And so I've kind of appointed him to do that, and we'll talk about that later. He's going to need to pop by. So he's gonna call and say, Kathy needs me to come check X, Y, Z.
And we
Yeah.
want our board members to be ingrained in the culture here and the things we're doing here on a daily operational base. And so I think there's a great benefit to having board involvement here on our campus.
I appreciate those changes.
We just, no, absolutely,
how
we
about
just
call for the
need
question?
to,
Hold on one second.
Be
Paul,
respectful of staff.
as you make your adjustments to that last paragraph on page 2,
Yes, sir.
take a look at point number 9. You want to make the verbiage match.
The school office,
Okay,
okay?
thank
It
you.
says, yeah, it says just the main office on the back, so you change the verbiage on that page 2, make sure it matches up there. So,
On page 4?
After we've,
on page 4, yeah.
okay, after we've approved this tonight, if you would all take this home with you and send those emails to Jillian, where you see we need to make one match the other. Yeah, see, okay? Because I have a hunch we're gonna find more. Is there anything else that we can amend tonight? Or that we want to, or are we content with it as it stands? Until the next meeting changes are made?
No.
Are there any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. No. I'll do them individually instead of all at once. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, okay. I see that we have, I see that we have visitors in the audience tonight. I want to bring to your attention that you are being video recorded. Okay? We are on item number 8, consideration of approval of memorandum of understanding with the Palmdale School District for a clear administrative credential program. Is there any member of the audience who wants to address that item tonight? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Dilger?
Yes, please consider this MOU with AXA through our partnering district, or PSD. This will support Felicia Gray, our elementary school vice principal, in helping her earn her clear credentialing, her clear administrative credentialing. And speaking to Felicia, she's excited about this opportunity if it does get approved. She's definitely deep into that program and would definitely could utilize the support through that district and through AXA, I should say.
And we would entertain the same MOU contract for any administrative intern who has their tier 1 and is looking to finish this piece. And they would need to bring that to Mr. Strong, our HR department, and he will take a look at where they are with their credential.
Question.
Do we have a motion yet?
Yep.
We do?
Yep, and a second.
Okay, yes, ask him.
The 10,000 is this, we're paying the 10,000?
Yes, we are paying.
I see where the candidate
the
pays
only-
1,000.
I guess the concern I have is, what happens if after she gets her administrative credential, she leaves?
That's the risk we take.
Do we have an MOU that she stays?
Well, that's why they have to go to HR and have that conversation with HR. HR needs to put that in place, and unfortunately, Mr. Strong is not here with us tonight. Do you know whether he has done that, or is it working on that?
Working on that,
That's
nothing
what
in
I
writing has been described to that, but I do believe this is a risk when we support our staff members in their personal growth. Of course, we want people internally to grow up through TPAA, stay here forever. There's always this risk when we're helping people's skill sets grow that they may take that skill sets in another area, which is their right as a person within our society to do so.
And you
Well,
know,
no,
this,
I mean, I'm just saying, can't. She has a contract that we sign every year. and so
Yeah, she
forth.
has an
have-
will employment
I
agreement.
mean, there are certain, I know there are certain things where, Teach for America, different things where, yes, we will pay for this, however, you will then have to give back to us 2 years of service for that. What I'm saying is there some way that that can be written in that she's aware that, yes, we're gonna pay for you to get your credential, but then we expect that you will then be an administrator for us for at least 2 years after that.
We do not have contracts here. We have what are called employment
At-will employment
agreements, and they are at will. And that's at will on both sides. We don't
Okay.
have contracts. But I think that we need to pursue the,
If we could
oh,
definitely
and I
explore
know
this,
he has
absolutely.
had those.
I'm just, I mean,
Yes.
I'm not saying that I'm just saying, you know, that that looks pretty nice for $10,000 to be able to get that we're doing it. And there may be, especially with how administrative jobs.
This is
come about.
also not open to all certificated persons, only to those who have their tier 1 administrative credential. They're already working on it.
And working. Palmdale is doing this, but they were selected by AXA. AXA basically is one of the organizations that was approved by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing to do this. And Palmdale is doing it for Lancaster and Keppel and a bunch of Learn for Life and Acton and a bunch of folks.
And themselves.
Hmm?
And themselves.
And themselves.
Okay. Fine.
For clarity, this is our agreement with Palmdale School District to provide these services. Whatever personnel pieces correspond to that would be decided at another forum and another.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. And that's why that's not here, because
Yes, of
we
course.
haven't firmed that up. Okay?
And it shows the candidate actually pays something too, right?
Yes.
There's some buy-in there
Yes.
as well.
They have to pony up to be an AXA number, I think.
Are there any other comments or questions? Mrs. Cookins, does the high school district provide their own? I mean, do they have an access? You do have a process? Okay. Is that process available to others? Or I'm thinking specifically about those folks we have at the high school.
I would need to inquire.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes.
Just quick, I just wonder how many we're talking about.
One.
I mean, just one?
Just one right now. And we haven't. Five, possibly, but I don't think they're
At that point.
at that point yet.
Universities aren't doing too much anymore.
Item number 9, consideration of approval of contract with Sylvan Learning Center. Are there any visitors who wish to address this item? Seeing none, Mr. Dilger?
Absolutely. This contract will open opportunities to utilize Sylvan Learning for supplemental support of our student population on an as-needed basis. This doesn't lock us into anything. It just allows us to build options for our student population if it's needed to execute in specific subjects such as language arts, reading, and math.
Move to approve.
I second.
Are there any I'm sorry, who's second? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments and concern about this?
I do. Who makes the decision? Which students? What subject? How long?
That would be through the administrator, the school counselor,
You say the administrator,
let's see, the principal over the site.
principal over that grade band.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. Item number 10, consideration of approval of contract with EdLogical Group. Mr. Dild, do I have any members of the audience who want to? Seeing none, Mr. Dilger?
Absolutely. Last week, the board empowered me to go into MOUs or find MOUs to support our student population. This contract is not for services, but builds the potential to bring on specialized personnel who we may or may not need on a case-by-case basis until we fill academic-based positions ourselves. We have to serve our students, we have to serve the needs of our campus. We want to build all the options we can through these other agencies to be able to utilize them if needed until these vacant positions are filled.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve, Your Honor.
Second.
Paul, who did you work with to come up with this?
We worked with localized reviews. We worked with different individuals on the board who suggested that as an option to consider through our SELPA, through the different agencies there to look at this. And they're very highly reviewed, so we would like to bring that forward.
In fact, EdLogical is a non-public agency, and they are certified by CDE. Okay.
What was the, how did you arrive at the numbers? Is there a guess of service of students?
Well, we put our heads together on this one. This is, correct me if I don't remember this is how we came up with it. That is almost a worst case number, okay? Because we don't know yet as we work through our process which students will be identified as needing which service, and we have to give Mr. Strong time to hire.
Right, and that staffing model it will really determine what the needs are. So we wanted to build a blanket in there, not to exceed that blanket, but our goal is to come well below that if at all possible. But I don't want the budgetary, within reason, to limit the services that we can provide our students and the changes that we need to make.
Are there any other comments? Questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. Item number 11, consideration to approve addition of interim chief executive officer as main signer for the Palmdale Aerospace Academy. Mr. Dilger?
Absolutely, pretty self-explanatory on there, but this just allows me as acting CEO to be the main signer. I also want to point out that the treasurer, Gary Roberts, is also approved as a backup signer and has been approved from that level. But this allows me to take the day-to-day operations and budgetary to keep things moving during this interim.
Oh, I like that.
You didn't want to sign all the
I don't think I
paychecks?
wanna, yeah, I have a very bad signature.
And I will work, of course, within the board policies and the governing policies to ensure that the proper signs are in play. And if I see anything of question, I will bring forward.
Do I have a motion?
I'll second it.
Are there any questions or comments?
I do. You have a look on your face, Michelle, like you have.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Michelle,
You
I
go
saw
first.
Michelle first. Michelle goes
Do
first.
we currently require 2 signers on check?
We do. I did some checking into that. However, our bank will not honor the request for mandatory 2 signature. But
But
we
we
do.
internally
Yes, that's why
Is there a threshold for that or any check?
$50,000.
Okay,
Anything above that.
okay, but below that is 1 signer.
And we may want to take a look at that, Michelle.
I understand the original writing for this, number 11, was for Mr. Dilger, but number 12 and 13,
Okay, he is and will continue to be the only permanent employee at that level who could be authorized to be the
Okay,
signatory.
but
Okay.
is he going to maintain the title of interim chief executive officer?
When we get to the next 2 items, that'll be clear.
Yeah, but you're asking me to
Voting
say
on
yes
that.
to this without making it clear.
Well, it
Okay.
looks
That's
like-
why I'm asking the question.
Okay,
So it looks like the title of interim chief executive officer applies to Mr. Dilger. and the
yeah,
other
Mr.
2
Dilger
are
is
up
in
for
fact, this is a
consideration.
typo on the agenda. He is our acting.
Acting.
He is our acting
Correct.
And the other 2 are
interim.
We should call this an acting.
Yeah,
Let
it is-
let me
it is-
rephrase my question.
Okay,
The signer of checks, the authority to sign checks will remain with Mr. Dilger
will remain
and
with
will
Mr.
not be part of the functions of the two.
Interim.
That is
12 and 13.
correct.
Okay,
That is
that's-
correct.
That's what I wanted
Yes.
cleared
But the
up.
language should be
to
changed,
see
I
who
think
all
the
was gonna get-
Well, this is the language that was provided to us.
Right, okay,
So,
so I just
okay.
wanted to make that clear.
Now we get lots of
So
interims.
he will
Yeah.
continue on and he will have
He
the
will
magic
continue
of
on.
the pen, the
Yes.
power of the pen.
On 11,
Okay.
should we change that to acting chief executive officer instead of interim? Would that make that clear?
Who made the motion?
I forget.
Patty made the motion, Ellen made the motion. Ellen made the motion. Will you amend your motion, please?
Yes,
Two actions.
I move to amend the previous motion to consider approval of the addition of the acting chief executive officer as the main signer for the Palm Valley Space Academy.
That's okay.
Patty, will you second that again?
I would.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. Board members, I would like a motion to table items 12 and 13 to our next board meeting. And the reason for that is our attorneys called this afternoon after reviewing our agenda. Despite the fact that we just approved the salary study last week, they wanted approved on the same agenda as these two contracts. They feel that that more aligns it with what the Brown Act says. And so I need a motion to table these two.
Move to table both 12 and 13.
I'll second it.
Okay, now we can have.
No, she knows.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, we're good. We're good. We're good.
Okay, the question I would have though, our next board meeting is the 16th of December?
We may need to have another special
I was
meeting.
gonna say, because this says December 2nd is the start.
Yes,
You do it.
and I should tell you,
Okay.
ratification was discussed with both Mr. Perkins and Mrs. Jaggy.
Perkins isn't an issue because his isn't until January.
Right,
It'd be,
but ratification was discussed nonetheless.
okay,
I covered all the bases.
okay.
So,
I know we're motion to table, but can we discuss even though it's tabled?
yes, absolutely.
Discuss the issue of
Yeah.
tabling.
It's a table discussion.
So we have a first and a second, right? Who seconded that
I
motion?
did.
Mrs.
You gotta speak in
Perkins.
her other ear, she's deaf on this one.
Yeah. She's shut off John is what she's done, so the whole side is
That one really hurts.
Go ahead.
Well, in consideration that Ms. Jaggy has joined us this evening, I just want to say that I am glad that we have such a rich pool of resources to draw from in this community when it comes to administrators. Her reputation precedes her, and I have always known her to be a dedicated educational leader, and I'm very grateful that she is willing to put her name in to support our school as we go through this transition. Very grateful for that. Additionally, Mr. Perkins is an esteemed educational leader as well, and I did have the pleasure of coming on campus on Thursday during what was probably one of the
Worst days?
worst days for campuses in the Antelope Valley, valley-wide. The challenges that were being faced in the wake, as you had mentioned, of the tragedy at Saugus created, it really brought out the pain that people were feeling, and they decided to take that out on others via hoaxes, district-wide, valley-wide. So, but I do have to say that coming here on Thursday and being able to see Mr. Perkins, his calm demeanor, the way that things were being handled, as well as, with Mr. Dilger and the entire staff. I mean, I have to commend staff at this point too, given everything that was going on, the calmness on campus, the learning that was still taking place, but specifically Mr. Perkins taking the time to make sure that a board member and a parent had the opportunity to know exactly what was happening at campus, and knowing that we have a leader of that caliber who was here at that time was very meaningful to me. So thank you. I appreciate these coming, and I'll be glad to see these come back again.
And I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Mrs. Jaggi. This is Mrs. Melinda Jaggi, and we will bring your contract back. And I want to echo everything that Mrs. Coogan said. I am so excited and pleased that you agreed to come and work with us and serve our students. I am thrilled. Thank you. And I might add at no small sacrifice to your personal life, and I thank you for that.
It's a 9-month-old grandson, the first grandkid. We get it.
This is really gonna cut into her sloth.
Well, we get it. We grandparents get it. Is there any other conversation, discussion, questions about tabling these two items?
I just wanted to say that, actually, my son wanted to say hi to you. He worked with you at Shadow Hills, and Mr. Perkins was his principal, Chris Vanders. So he
Oh,
just
my
wanted
goodness, yes.
to let you know.
Bye-bye.
So I think they're two dollars. But we could table it.
Well, we have to because we didn't follow procedure. Any other questions, comments?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. Item 14 is informational only. Dr. Jocelyn Fitzgerald has agreed to assume the interim position of elementary school principal pending her receiving her clear administrative credential in the next few weeks. Mr. Dilger?
Yeah, just to kind of, we are estimating about 2 to 3 weeks with that. She's coming from out of state. She has tons of experience as principal, over 10 years, multiple levels, worked with a high-risk population in her previous, and has really hit the ground running here in her interventionist position prior to this opportunity. So when exploring this need, with the recent change that happened last week, she wanted to throw her hat in the ring with the experience that she brings to the table. And working with Felicia Gray, the elementary school VP, she feels very strongly that Dr. Fitzgerald could be a good support for her, and she can learn a lot from Dr. Fitzgerald on the day-to-day interactions of a principal. And so this is informational only because we do need to make sure that the credentialing gets cleared here in California. But her working through CDE and our credentialing agencies, I believe that's only a 2 to 3 week window prior to that happening, that clearance coming through.
And then I guess if
If
there's a hiccup,
She is already an active employee in an interventionist role.
Her position is interventionist.
California is notorious for a lack of reciprocity with virtually all states. They can be real persnickety.
Thus, we have approved Mr. Perkins as substitute principal.
So,
Okay. We're covered,
Good.
This is incredible. Nice.
okay? Those are all of our items tonight. Does anybody wish to comment on closed session items? Okay, seeing none. No, I have to read to you the 2 bullet points, I'm sorry, before we can recess. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 or 3 of subdivision D of the section 54956.9 cases, and public employee discipline dismissal release. We are now recessed to closed session.
Do we have to get IT support to shut from?
We're going to take a quick break.
Oh, we're gonna have a little break.
Yeah, we are going to have a little
He
break.
was hiding behind the computers.
No. No, there's just 2. I do not. You can go ahead. You're clear. You're good. You don't have